100% football is cycles. Whatever happens, whoever it is, whatever the squad, we will be back. I have no doubt about that.
Manchester United are unbeaten in 4, with 11 scored and only 1 conceded. But it's not all positivity at Old Trafford. We're chatting about back-to-back draws, misfiring forwards, Erik Ten Hag, and a Sunday showdown with Spurs. It's all coming up on episode 20 of the Theatre of Red. You are all very welcome to the latest instalment of the fastest growing Manchester United podcast on the planet. In what is episode 20 of our weekly show, we have encountered an array of vibrant personalities and individuals, each adding their own unique flair and touch to this great weekly instalment. Joining me today is a legendary figure, the man behind the very first Manchester United fanzine, ensuring that the voice of the supporter has remained prominent since 1987. I am, of course, speaking about Red News and the one and only Barney Chilton. How are you doing today, sir?
Best introduction I've ever had, and any vibrancy you had on the show, I'll immediately clasp out of your hands. Don't worry about that. I'm good, thanks.
Barney, as always, with Manchester United on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, we have plenty to discuss. But I'm always conscious with this. And before we get into it, for the benefit of those listening who may be unfamiliar with Red News, can you share the backstory behind the famous fanzine and how it came to fruition and the influence that inspired its creation in the first place?
We've always been a small dot in the universe, so I would never overplay, but the importance of fanzines as general rather than ahead of Red News. But in the 80s, conditions and treatment and tolerance levels of fans was a far cry from now, although the themes remain constant in what we're arguing and fighting for, and the issues of then are still as relevant as the issues of today. But we didn't have a voice, and we were really badly treated, and there was an escalation, obviously, in the late 80s that everyone knows that the treatment resulted in people dying just going to a football match, and it was an horrendous, we may look fondly at the wider era of football fandom, but it was a horrendous era for treatment. So we needed a voice, and fanzines, obviously there've been punk fanzines and various different inclinations for different genres, but football fanzines had only just started to come along, and there wasn't one at United, and I was doing every game then with my mum, and we were saying, then something needs to happen here. Mum was the forefront, as what I call her, the founder, that she said, we've got to get one going. And there wasn't anyone, there was a group of us who were interested, but no one had the time. And I was a student at like A levels. So I said, I'll do it. And then here we are 7 years later. But I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of United's support, the community. And then obviously we've had Red Issue and United We Stand. I wish Red Issue was still here. But we've done our bit. We've tried to always fight for fans and give fans a voice, and it's changed. We all know the changes nowadays, but I still think we're relevant. I still think there's so much noise that that you're going to find us in the same corners of Old Trafford selling. And we don't always get it right. We try and just give people a chance to air their views, and also that the club knows we're there, thorns in our sides, rustling feathers. We're not going to be coming in and having tea and coffee with them. We're going to go and try and bang on those windows saying, hey, don't ever forget the local community. Don't ever forget, the fans that have been here for a long or short while. And whether we've succeeded or not, I love the fact that there's fanzines being created now, new ones, may it never change.
That is a fantastic breakdown of what is something that's far greater than you're giving yourself credit for. I have got ancient editions framed that are on the wall of my son's bedroom, and I'm very, very proud of that. And I'm very proud that he has grown up knowing of your unique piece and what you created and how it continues to grow throughout the years. But in focusing on the football and the reason that you got there in the first place, I think it's probably fair to say that you've encountered plenty of highs and lows throughout your time supporting the club. And if you reference someone like the generation of my son, it's something that many of this newer generation are unable to comprehend as a result of the success that Sir Alex brought. We live in a time when Manchester United is the most profitable talking point in football media. anything but a comprehensive victory is dissected to within an inch of its life. And the manager will ultimately begin trending with a desire for change. Present day, we're following back-to-back victories against Southampton and Barnsley. And we now witness back-to-back draws with Crystal Palace in the league and FC20 in Europe. Both fixtures were there for the taking. Now, an already disgruntled supporter base are there in a rather unsavoury mood thereafter. Focusing on Wednesday's 1-1 draw with our Dutch visitors, what was your view following the final whistle of that Europa League encounter, Barney?
Well, there's so many points to cover, really, because there's big United and there's small United. There's highs and lows on and off the field. I wasn't there yesterday. I have a young son, so I don't do every game anymore. Life changes sometimes, so I'm going to do Bow Day. I'm going to do Rangers, but so obviously your experience. What I've noticed as my boy grows up, like your experience at the game is totally different from when you're not there. There's no denying that. And it's not an argument of match goers versus internet reds, because we all care, but it's a totally different experience when you're at the game. For example, at Palace, I could see much more positives than when I wasn't at Brighton, where I was much more critical. So it was a strange even dynamic in my own head from those experiences. So because you're sort of detached, I think I'm more critical when I'm not there. So I was much more critical of the second half yesterday. I don't. This is the plug for the mag. I've written a long editorial for the next mag. I don't know. I just don't know. United have always confounded us. Fergie's sides were criticised, and not just about the late 80s, early 90s. Even when we were winning things, there was 4-4-2 and change of formation and Tinkerbell. I just don't know. I don't. We'll know a lot more after Villa. We'll know a lot more with the pointless third international break. But I can see someone messaging in WhatsApp earlier. There's a haze. I think we can see improvement, but it's through a haze this season. We need to see it more. It's not like 7 games in to Erik ten Hag's new structural era, because you've got to also judge the 2 years that have come before it. How this pans out, I think I did get the sense, because I try and avoid dipping my toes into social media when we don't win, but I got the sense that there was a change in the dynamics online. Don't know whether the game, because at the game you go there, you support. We can all, you can have mates who feel Erik's not good enough, but you're there, so you that dynamics changed. We should be doing better. There's no denying. You've got to be doing better. For me, it was criminal that we didn't sign an experienced striker along Hoyland and Xerxes. I think, and sometimes fans know what we're talking about. I said it would cost us last season, and I think it will cost us this season, and it is already costing us. They'll play 20, 25 games. For the future is great, but also we needed a here and now. But Erik, don't write him off, as we know. Don't write him off just yet. But whether this turns into it, there's Rude overlooking him like a Roman figure in the background. United is never dull, is it? As you said, there's just 1,000 topics from one game of football. Then Bruno's being brought into the discussion, and I would never, ever write Bruno off. He's been frustrating. He's sometimes he goes too far right. Sometimes he's trying to do too much. God love him, which when it pays off, you see him working his socks off, he scores assists. But I don't know. I don't know what you think. They never cease to baffle us.
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there with the very last topic you're talking about in Bruno Fernandes, because we've largely associated the Portuguese man with goals, assists, passion, and game-winning moments since he's arrived in the Northwest. Even just bring it back to last season, Barney. Despite retaining the title of the most creative player in the Premier League, I mean, to go back to back with that, you still had a subsection of supporters that were opting to focus on misplaced passes. Now, when you take an unusually subpar start to this campaign, on his part, on an individual part, and then you add the figure of, we'll say, a newly arrived Xerxes that you've mentioned into the equation, the roles and the capabilities of Bruno have obviously become a daily discussion. And many feel now that he'd be fair suited on the bench with this dynamic of Xerxes entering the field. That in itself shows just how fickle we are as a fan base, because 2 weeks ago, Xerxes was too big, too cumbersome, and not a Manchester United player. 2 weeks later, he's good enough to bench our captain. For me, Bruno is one of the greatest players in the world in his role. And yes, he's had a patchy 5 or 6 games, but the capabilities that he supplies, they far outweigh some misplaced passes, in my own personal opinion. It's something that I championed for an awful long time last season, that when the focus was coming out that, his pass completion is only 78%, it's 79%, it's 80%, you are tasking an individual to be the primary creator for the side. And while he might be misplacing 20% of his passes, how many key passes is he creating? How many chances is he creating for his teammates? While I don't believe that any player is beyond dropping, I'm not entirely sure why people feel the team would be better without him in it. I can understand that his form is not where it needs to be. And I understand the suggestion that his quick play and his tendency to rush through the phases can be frowned upon. But where do you stand on the topic of Bruno in the first team at the moment in time?
He has had these phases before. He does have these patchy spells, as you probably can tell. I'm a dinosaur, so past completions and the statification of everything just pass me by. I don't care. I can see with my own eyes what someone does. I tell you what, I sometimes was moaning about Bruno's never effort, but the overriding contributions. And then I left the cup final and I said to myself, I'll never do it again, because that man at that cup final against the best team absolutely shone. So I think sometimes Ollie made an interesting point after he'd left, that he did keep on saying to him, channel it, know when to preserve those moments. But he's doing it for the team, and I have no doubt that he will be back in the assists and the goals. But there might be an overall conversation of where you eventually fit him. We're quite dogmatic, and Erik's especially dogmatic in playing this particular system. Sometimes change it up a little bit. Xerxes might, tuck him in a little bit. It doesn't have to be this set formation. Like if there's anything from the 3-game run at the end of last season and then the cup final, is Erik finally learned, and I'm a fan, but you can criticise your managers, is that he showed, whether Jason Wilcox overall had a say, like change things up, and then let's see. But there is an over, if you look at it, we're so here and now, and we're like that with everything. We're on our devices. But if you look, we've had a ridiculous World Cup shoved in the middle of a season. We've had a Euro tournament, then hardly any break. Pre-season's daft, travelling worse, dafter than ever. And then they're shunted back and they're told to play even more games for a group stage where you can finish 24th and still win it. I mean, like, they fair play the players. They need to make the point now. It's enough, if enough isn't enough now, when is it going to be? And someone said, sorry, that's the cat thing going on. But someone put yesterday, we may struggle to qualify. I think me and you in the team in that Europa group wouldn't struggle to qualify. It's like it would be physically impossible after 8 games. They say 10 points is enough. I mean, when is enough is enough. And Bruno, unfortunately, has carried a burden for a long time. And I don't think, like resting or drop, not for Sunday, 100%. I've got this bizarre psyche. He's going to do very well Sunday. But he can juggle it up. But as I made the point to another Red yesterday, with Manu rested, it could have worked with the minutes that he tried to shove around, but it didn't work. And then we're all looking, did he play too much? Should he have got a game? Ever thus. But the initial point you made, the scary part, and I mentioned the Glazers, the whole mismanagement of the club, the whole debacle of how a great empire that Fergie built, and yes, he should have said more at the end, was dismantled. Is you'll have kids who are 13 or 14 now who will have no recollection of a wider United success. Even in our turmoil, we've still won more than so many of our rivals. But as that great elite team that we were lucky to see grow and develop, it's 14, like 10 years since the title, coming up to 11 years, coming up to 12 years. We used to laugh at a certain other team that it would grow and grow, and that's just shocking mismanagement.
how they got away with it and continue to do so, because everybody seems to have gone quiet about the Glazers. They're still there, but obviously with what's after occurring with Radcliffe and this best-in-class Ineos backroom team coming in, it's taken the attention away from it, and we're starting to focus on something else. And realistically, that cancer is still there. It's still within the club, and it's still causing the issue there. So I do think in the context of what we're talking about with this younger generation not really understanding the wider picture, a lot of that comes from this attrition rate and this conveyor belt system that we've been living on in a 2-3 season period of bringing in managers, sacking them, bringing in managers, sacking them. I mean, Wednesday afternoon, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer started trending for seemingly answering a question over in Norway as to whether or not he'd be interested in going back to Manchester United if he was given a call. The only way that this football club is going to get back to its proper days is when those Americans are gone. But acting on I suppose, the situation that we're in at this moment in time where they do exist, it's about adhering to a structure. And it's about maintaining the principles and the fundamentals of a project that's being set out. You can clearly see from what I was saying a few moments ago that there is a different dynamic in this football side than there was last year. Anybody can look at it. We're not conceding anywhere near the same level of shots. We're not being walked through, although that goal that 20 got, the fullback did run nearly 60 yards unattended straight through the middle of the field, which was very reminiscent of Wolves from the opening day on last season. But the largest issue here is goals, or a lack of them. And it's the fundamental issue this season. For me, there's an obvious change, as I've said. But for whatever reason, we're lacking that sort of a cutting edge in the final third, Barney. It's highlighted by this lovely statistic that sees Ten Hag's side top in the charts with 17 big chances missed. And that's 5 more than our closest rivals underneath us. It was once again on show in Europe because there was only 4 shots on target from 18 attempted. Now, given the firepower that we have in the final third of the field, and also coupling comments that Emmanuel Petit actually came out, I know he's a little bit contentious in what he says anyway, but he maintains that Erik ten Hag has been let down by his senior players, and that a lot of them need to start shouldering the burden of what's going on, that it's not all entirely his fault. How do you view the weekly issue of the lack of goals, the inability to convert any one of these numerous chances that are being created on a weekly basis?
A naivety, inexperience, where you miss. I know Tony was greedy, but you sometimes have to bite the bullet and make deals that you might not feel comfortable with over a longer term, but think you got an experienced player who knows to score. That's a definite. And also, I think confidence is huge, as we saw with Rashford just in a week. Looked a totally different player. And I think, unfortunately, this is on Ten Hag, that sometimes we try and replicate a pitter patter, not dynamic enough. Take a chance. That's your moment. Take a chance, and no, we don't see that, and we haven't seen that for a long period of time. And that's something I do think. And what I've liked about Xerxes, it's a bit like Andy Cole. Not that I'm comparing the two, but miss as many chances as you want. You're getting in the right spots, especially in the league games. He's been getting in the right areas, so that's a good sign, because for so many games we either weren't putting crosses in, we weren't making connections up top, and we were just simply we'd get to the byline and we'd pass it back. So I've made this point repeated. Erik needs to gamble more, and that goes on the players. So I think it's an amalgamation, and we can't forget there are some players who wanted him gone last year. He's got the team spirit's good, so it's still a very strange situation. I think we all thought he'd go, whatever happened in the FA Cup, and the players said they were unsure. So the structural changes are very, very good. Hopefully, we don't know for sure, nothing's certain, but it looks, and the reputations they've got. So Erik won't be given long there, but we still know that there are 5 or 6 issues in that squad. Not helped by the farce of the Luke Shaw thing, which has already bitten us. Matsurahi looks very good. I don't think Delo, as a regular, he had a great season last year for him. I think he's an ongoing issue. I think the defence is still trying to get to know each other, and we still don't know what is the midfield that's going to work. And Erik's very dogmatic. He likes playing the same players. What's going to work for him? But in the madness, I saw Ugarte written off last night. For God Almighty, what is going? Just get me out of here.
It is ludicrous, and I think it's best to avoid social media for 24 to 48 hours unless we've won 3-0. You know, one of the things I was discussing with one of my colleagues today is that Ten Hag is obviously, it appears he's still trying to settle on his best 11. And I'd say deep down, obviously, he knows what his desirable best 11 is, but whether that actually comes to fruition on the field is an entirely different story. You mentioned the players there, some of them that maybe didn't want him there during the summer, some that did. A fellow we have to talk about for a couple of months is Christian Eriksen, because I think he's very much dragged himself back into the first team conversation. He's after starting 4 consecutive fixtures, and that rocket of a goal he got on Wednesday was fully deserved. Now, I wouldn't hold too much of a grudge with him for his part in the goal that we conceded, although it did mirror that sort of a casual approach that has been the general feeling throughout the second half. It was the same in the second half against Crystal Palace. I had anticipated his departure in the summer, but I will say I was pleasantly surprised when he stayed, because not only you're factoring his undeniable ability, you've got his experience and his leadership, which is a valuable asset in the dressing room. When you factor the marathon that is ahead, not just in the Premier League, but we know that Erik likes those domestic cups, and we know he's not overly fond of rotation at the best of times. But just how crucial do you see a player of the caliber of Christian Eriksen for the season to come?
The words there, pleasantly surprised. Because there were phases at the end of last season where he was huffing more than me trying to lug a bag. Really, he was really looking. So you know, whatever he's done in the summer, he's got the brain. We don't. I do think instances, you know, it was a comedy of errors, the goal against 20, but he does lose the ball, and that's where you've got to have protection. You know, you've got to have someone with nous going, I've got to buffet him here, if you know, just because he does lose the ball like that. But it's been an outstanding week. I thought he was that we looked lackluster when he went off at Palace, and I never thought I'd say that. I did think last night, how is, because it was a stronger team than I thought Erik would play last night, knowing how big this next week is. So I wonder how he's going to factor it all in. The squad looks better. And I did think, you know, I don't want to feel worst case scenario, but I thought this morning with all the noise again, I did think whatever happens, we've had so many of these incidences and I don't want it to happen. But knowing that there's still 5 or 6 issues, the squad is going to be in a hell of a lot better place if he did go. And that's the first time we can say that in quite a considerable period of time, because we've had a lot of older players and suddenly the squad's younger, but he needs to work it out. But it's not so much, I always said Ollie never had breathing space. Erik has breathing space, but sometimes he never factors in. There's no like, is he got a team in Villa in his head? You know, like Fergie, not compare it, but Fergie had to have a team for Villa in his head. I don't think Erik thinks like that. I think he thinks, I've got Spurs and then we'll deal with Porto. Whereas you'd like to think with Ruud coming in, right, you've got 3 games, I've got possibly 3 different systems, because that's what good coaches and managerial setups do. You know, we're right, we've already done Spurs to death. I'm already got the team ready for Porto and Villa. And that's where, like, you don't get from D to A. So we know that, we all know that, but you want to get to C and B quickly. So that's where we need to see. He's clearly, McLaren last night, he's a very, very thoughtful coach. But I'd want to see more of his personality. When he's interviewed, he can sometimes have a laugh. I want to see that more in his team as well.
But how much of it then, Barney? Let me just extend on that to you. We're mentioning this, one of the many sides that Sir Alex created and the way that he would look at the opposition that he was coming up against. But really and truly, back in that time, Manchester United played the Manchester United way domestically. And it was the opposition teams that had to factor their approach and how they were going to play against Manchester United, especially if they were coming to Old Trafford, because not so long ago, Old Trafford was the definition of a footballing fortress. Fergie had a way of playing, and it was attack, 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 attack. You had your marauding fullbacks and your wingers. I wonder how much of it Ten Hag is looking at and trying to replicate in terms of what he has done at his Ajax and build this fantastic all-out conquering football side with superior footballers that have been established within a squad that, as you mentioned, is in a far better state, albeit we don't have a starting left back for what appears to be forever now. And there is a bit of an experience in the striking category. But this is a very strong squad. And maybe he's just trying to put together a dynamic similar to Fergie that he doesn't have to focus about the teams he's playing against. Instead, those teams have to focus about playing against his team.
But then you need to, we need to be seeing that, and we need to be seeing, like this has right now. This has an element of a year ago, and I was really hoping after the cup final it'd be a kick on, not spectacular, in the top of the league, but like where we'd be putting to bed some of these things, so there'd be and a calmer United is a better United for all of us. You're not that but you're not wondering what dickhead ABUs are saying about United. There's not just this, there's always a noise, but this constant erratic. How you get like going to, I can't underemphasize, the Glazers aren't losing or not winning these games of football, but the 20 years of them and the factors of them still being in the background and trying to sort out the messes. And the unfortunate side effect is that, it takes decades or years and years to build a fortress, and it takes a Moyes season to totally knock, and I'm not specifically blaming him, but 1 year can unravel the whole thing to where, when was the last time you turned up at a game thinking we're going to win? When was the last time you thought home certainty? Everyone was pleasantly surprised about Barnsley, and then typically people going, it's only Barnsley. We've had enough messes to think I'll take the Barnsley, but United, I hope, and we will. We're 100%. Football is cycles. Whatever happens, whoever it is, whatever the squad, we will be back. I have no doubt about that. How long it takes to get there. One of Ollie's mountains, and I love Ollie, but come on. I was at Watford. That was my boy's first game. There's no, you don't. It's not a computer game. You don't get a redemption second chance.
That's quite the first game to go to. I was thinking about it just before we started, obviously, with the fanzine starting in 1987. My first game, Palace, when Pete Molyneux held up the banner. That was my first game. So there's a historical element there. Now, we've touched on Spurs, Barney, without actually really diving into it. So we may go head first into that. United are without a win in the last 3 meetings against Spurs, all in the Premier League. There's 2 draws, there's 1 defeat. Ange Postecoglou's side, they've begun in somewhat of a similar fashion to ourselves. That has gone under the radar because obviously the media don't care about it, but both sides, they're on 7 points with 5 outings, and Spurs have scored 4 more goals, I believe. However, and despite everything, I can't help but feel that his attacking system is going to allow us an acre of space in behind. And I just have a sneaking feeling that there's going to be a lot of goals on offer for us. And in fact, we have hit 2 or more goals against Spurs in 6 of the last 7 meetings. I know you touched on it about Bruno having a role to play there. I agree with that, because Bruno has this ideal where he can get the ball and he can turn on a sixpence and just hit it. And then you've got your runners going in behind like Rashford, Garnacho, or anyone like that. And I really think Rashford, who we've discussed, appears to be a confident footballer again. He appears to be reclaiming his happiness in the football field. I think that there's going to be multiple opportunities for these guys to put plenty of goals past Spurs. And I don't know, call me deluded, but I think that we have the beating of these guys on Sunday.
I hope you're right. But when we play, when we play like that, we are good at it. There's no, we just need to time it right. Hold on. And I was surprised with how much space they gave us at Old Trafford. He's not for turning. I am worried about, I always think, they do have a decent strike force, but let's see. We look better defensively. We look more solid. We're not letting a daft amount of chances. I still have wider doubts about Onana, but he's had a good couple of weeks, and debating his positioning yesterday. But he's won us points at Southampton, as we see with the teams right at the top. You need to see your goalies earning you points in games like Sunday. But it'll be interesting, because this is. It would just be nice to go into. It seems like every international break, or most, we go in with bloody doom, and it's just like 2 weeks again of neurosis, and we're all chirping away, and it's occupying our thoughts. And I'm a very simple person, that if United win, like I'm sure the majority listening, if United win, my world is a better place. I wake up happy the next morning. I wish it wasn't like it, all these years, but it is. And I just want to go into not even the bigger picture, just into an international break in 10 days' time, thinking, not this again.
Yeah, I share that. And it's even particularly worse, Barney, when you start a fixture at 12:30 on Saturday morning, because you never know what you're going to get and how the rest of the weekend is going to feel after it. But you've touched on it with regards to Porto and Villa. This fixture against Spurs on Sunday, it's going to start a run of Spurs. Then we got Porto away. We got Villa away. Brentford at home. and then away to Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce. And that's up to the 24th of October, which is more or less a month. And obviously we have that international break sandwiched in the middle. It may seem bizarre, given the show of confidence in the summer from Ineos, from this best-in-class backroom team. But this is about as critical a period for Erik ten Hag as I can imagine, and I think that he has possibly had at his tenure in Old Trafford. And I can't help but feel that a poor run without goals and wins may prove too difficult to ignore for that best-in-class backroom team. Would you share a similar thought process over that 5 games, or would you even cut it shorter before the international break?
I hope, what I'd like to think is that United, because, they should have an inner belief, they should have a confidence in themselves. You don't want Alan Brazils and Gary Birtles. You want chest out, puffed out, going, yeah, we'll get through these 3 games, and then knock that view on its head and go, look, we've got Everton at home, we've got Leicester at home, we've got them winning, period, possibly up until we go to City. Let's build the points. The point I've made today to a lot of people is, forget all of us, because we can all have our opinions, but we've never had, thankfully for Fergie, we've never controlled the destiny of a manager. It's what Ineos are thinking. Would they, even say worst case, would they go against what they decided in May and October? And I don't think they would. It'll be ridiculous. I think they will give him till November and Christmas. If not, you don't know. We just don't know. There's so many that they came out before Liverpool and did that Q&A saying they backed him. I thought that because we lost, and someone let me know about it, it was just bad timing. Like, that was a little bit of a mistake. That maybe I get that the journos were all there, and but maybe the day before, or it was just badly timed. Like, it seemed like an own goal in its thing, but this would be on them as well. That they backed him. Some of us wanted that to happen, but would they then just throw their thing out? Yeah, I don't know. It's totally out. I just don't want to be in the situation where we're all dreading it. But before, where Van Gaal got a state of execution, that was dreadful. There was an inevitability. There may well be an inevitability with Erik. It just all becomes. It's never easy. The only thing that counts, very cliche, win games of football, and then all of this doesn't go away, but it sort of puts it into the thing. But I just don't know. You don't know what they're. I don't. Sorry, I'm not confusing myself here, but I don't think, from what I've. Since Jim and some of the people high up aren't particular fans of Ten Hag, but they were put in a position. Less so the cup final. I think the Tuchel, them not gelling when they met, sort of threw everyone off, because you can dread Southgate's arrival. I think they wanted Tuchel. People I trust, whether people believe it or not, said they wanted Tuchel. That it didn't happen, and it might well happen again. I wouldn't discount it. But I think Ten Hag knows that a couple of the people above him don't rate him or don't think he's going to be there. A couple have said, let's see. How long's a piece of string? God knows. I just don't know. But will... You see, I have doubts about Tuchel. I just don't. If there was someone who could walk in and United was sorted, like a Klopp and Pep, that we mistook and made a mess of, then we'd have done it, wouldn't we? But who is out there that can solve this mess? Unless Rude does his breathing down his neck. But there's so many there's always what ifs, isn't there? I'm sorry, I'm just confused myself.
But your exact stance on this, I mean, it perfectly summarizes and typifies the entire supporter base, because it is a very confusing situation, Barney. I've tried to even draw this back further and to look at it from a financial aspect, because obviously when you see what's gone on with Everton, when you see what's after happening with Leicester, you've got the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules. When you've got a situation where Sir Jim Ratcliffe is coming into the club and trying to affect people sitting behind desks and working in order to address cost-cutting measures, what sort of sense does it make to keep Ten Hag, to sign him to an additional year's contract which ultimately, if you then take the decision 2 to 3 months later to sack him, you have a higher severance package to pay, which ultimately goes in terms of expenditure, which is affecting your profit and sustainability once more, which you're trying to get that solid line. Furthermore, obviously, the words of Dan Ashworth and Omar Barada, it was untimely. It couldn't have come at a worse time, especially with the fact that it took about 12 hours after it came out to surface that the comments actually came prior to kickoff. But Dan Ashworth spoke back in June, and he made it very, very clear that football fans often get fixated on short-term results and short-term outcomes, and ultimately that doesn't breed success. You have to look at medium to long-term results. You set a project, you set goals, and you look at it over a medium to a long-term perspective. And I think from that particular point, that's why a lot of people are looking at November, December, because you're given essentially half a season to see how the progression is there. When I was trying to peel it all back, when you consider what we've had now, 7 games to the start of the season, and ultimately, momentum is the biggest thing in all of this, Barney, because momentum breeds so many positive things in a dressing room and on a football field. I had hoped that when they went out, got that bit of a reprieve with Onana saving that penalty and going on to beat Southampton 3-0. Maybe we're now going to go out and we're going to continue with this bit of momentum and we're going to take teams apart. And it looked like we were getting there with Crystal Palace as well, because we dominated that. And it was the first time in an awful long time that we actually dominated a game of football against a good football team. I just think that over the perspective of the next 5 games with Spurs, with Aston Villa, and particularly those 2 games, because they would be considered rivals for what we're trying to achieve with European football. But I just have a sneaking feeling that we're knocking on the door of something special. And as long as we can stay injury free, I do think this system is starting to click together. But I'm going to put you on the spot here now, Barney. Will he get the job done on Sunday? What's the scoreline going to be?
Well, pressure is no bad thing at United. A club at United should have that impetus to you've got to win. So, like, right, you've got to have a big week, Erik. That's brilliant. That's what Manchester United needs to be about. So I bizarrely think we'll win. Bizarrely. I always have doom about aways these days. So Villa, less so. And Porto, that Europa, especially in this format, is a bloody nightmare. This sounds, people have the hump, but I'm less asked about those early Europa. They're just about digging in and getting out of town, no injuries, try and eke out a few points here and there. But it's a ridiculous format. So it's Spurs and Villa 3-1.
As I said to you, 6 of the last 7 games, there was one of the last 7 games where we were kept scoreless. But in 6 of the last 7, we scored a minimum of 2 and then hit them for 3 on several occasions as well. I just think there's something there. I mean, we're creating the opportunities and we're not putting them away. It's only a matter of time before that changes. And I'm not going over the top on it. I just think that regardless of it being Manchester United or any other football team, if you continue to create opportunities, eventually it's going to come good. Barney, absolutely brilliant spending time with you again today, my man. What have you got coming up?
Right. So one thing that we mentioned earlier is the families. So whatever we think, whatever the noise, whatever the moans, there are people, families, dads, lads, mums, daughters, mums, sons like me, who are looking forward to Sunday thinking, bring on United. And that is what it still boils down to, that brilliance. If you ever get me on again, we can talk for hours. But fundamentally, United is a good thing in our lives, even though it sometimes doesn't feel that. We've got the last mag to sell on Sunday. I know it's been a long time, this one, but we have to time them out a little bit so we can get some more mags later on in the season. So if you are going Sunday, please support us. And if you've never tried a fanzine, give it a go. We do a podcast too, which is a bit pub based after and before games. And we've got a new mag out for Brentford, and we've got some cracking mags coming, and our second division memory starts next mag. And some of the photos, bloody hell, but we've got some good memories of it's 50 years. The time goes, so quick. But thanks for having me on, I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you taking the time to spend it with me. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way they can do so, Barney?
Email or the DM me on Twitter or Instagram. I'm not the quickest, as I'm not the sharpest tool in the box, but I will get back to you. And if you can, write stories. Print is not dead. Text is great, and longer form reads and longer form articles. I always maintain we all have at least one great story in us. So if you're listening and you've got one, please share it.
Absolutely, 100%. And fanzines are the lifeblood of the supporters of this football club, and not just this football club, of every football team. It is imperative that in 2024 we continue to support our fanzines. Great individuals like Barney, who have dedicated so much of their lives to the passion and the love of this football club. And your support and my support really is the only thing keeping them going. Doesn't cost a whole pile, but the benefit and the rewards that you're going to achieve by supporting these fanzines, it just goes on beyond words. And once more, to continue beating my own drum, if you're still here, kindly subscribe to be the first updated about future episodes, and a review also goes a long way if you feel it. Thank you all for your time once more, and let's hope we're chatting about a win next week. Have a good one, folks. Take care.